And every morning starts like that. It's a party. And you're like, this is what religion should be. Like, not religion, but like worshiping God you should enjoy it. It should be fun and colorful and joyous and ecstatic. And like, and I've done a lot of drugs in my life, but what I felt at that temple, I've never felt on any drug. And they'll tell you that, and you're like, oh yeah, but you got to do the process and so there's not faith, but you have to trust the process and practice it and follow it. And the closer you get to you, the higher you get. And yeah, it's really amazing. And I'm just getting started. I got a lot of stuff to work through. But when I can't find anything else that works, I just put on the Hare Krishna chanting, and I go through that, and the emotions come up, and I recommend anybody try it. Everybody give it a try. They're so open. I mean, within the restrictions, I got in trouble for doing yoga in the temple. They weren't happy about that. They said I was scaring people. And I'm like, my body hurts. I got to do my yoga. And they're like, yeah, but not here.
Yeah, everybody has boundaries.
Yeah.
This is a highly charged call this evening, so no surprise as to what's happening here. As I said, my computer is incredibly full and it doesn't appreciate it right now. And so I'm having some technical issues because it's saying I'm to the limit of what I can do.
Oh,
right.
Got it.
So it's telling me to F off in a not so nice way.
It's like that Sherpa helping someone go up Mount Everest. You ever seen the bags that Sherpas carry? They're like bigger than the Sherpa,
Right.
you know? And then like, you know, the rich guy who hired him, he's not carrying anything.
That's right.
Oh my God, really? I've even signed myself out of everything. And so it's like, it's even difficult to just like reopen this. That is so friggin' fascinating. We're gonna what the fuck? I have to, pardon my language. I am just like in my head, just catching up with like the insanity of what is, we're not going live to YouTube. That is not meant to happen. We will go live to Facebook if it will work. And if not, we're just going to have a private call and everyone else is going to get to tune in afterwards, simply because I should have taken care of this today. And then I let a whole bunch of other things get in the way. And all of those other things were important. But ultimately, this needed to probably take priority. So I own the fact that I could have done better and I didn't. And so it is thinking about going live on Facebook, but it might have been too much for it. Can you see me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. And so there's no interruption. I just can't see you, which is so fascinating. What I can see though is a YouTube video that I would have screen shared if I were able to, called "We Are in a Fourth Turning. What does that mean?" Have you heard of it?
No.
I think, did you post it in Telegram?
I did.
Yeah, okay, I saw that today. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, the fourth turning is essentially, each turning is a generation, and there's 20-year sequiums, which are 20-year blocks. And so you've got highs, you've got the high, awakening, the unraveling, and the crisis zones of the 20 years. And then you've got the prophets, nomads, heroes, and artists. So you have these different archetypes that have played out historically, are repeating themselves right now. And basically, we are being called to nurture the artists through the crisis, which is what we're doing. So way to go, us.
Woohoo!
Right? And then your contribution this evening, Katia, was actually where we left off in the last podcast, because you were talking about what it means to become the one. And ironically, I wrote my blog today, or the email I've sent out to those subscribed to ljeh.ca. It was literally 9 stages of becoming the one you were waiting for. And I did not realize this was what we were going to talk about tonight, but I fully trusted. So going back to what you were saying, Bella, earlier about needing to trust in the universe and also know the difference between trust and faith. And I think maybe we can talk more about that at some point as well, because I think that there's a lot to that. But Katia, I do want to throw it over to you and hear your perspective about what it means to be the one that you've been waiting for.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining tonight in the conversation. So yeah, I'm just excited to be able to, I guess, begin the night with, let's talk about context and what drives our ways of being and acting. And I believe that there are two primary contexts currently driving our ways of being and acting. One is the context of I'm not the one, and one is the context that I am the one. And there's two distinct worlds that each of those represents. So where I think we're heading as things are transforming is we're heading into an era which I call like a self-knowledge era. So it's a inquiry, discovery about who I am. And so this self-knowledge is a way that we can go inward and discover. It's a peeling away and peeling back of who we're not to reveal who we are. And it's like that Buddha story. I don't know if anyone's heard it, where there was this Buddha they were trying to hide because people were coming and they were going to, there was like a little confrontation war type thing. So they wanted to hide this golden Buddha. And so they put all this mud on top of the Buddha so that they could disguise it, that the people coming wouldn't rob the Buddha. And so what ended up happening is they ended up not taking it. But what happened is as they were taking apart, after this all blew over, they were taking apart the mud, it started to reveal the golden Buddha underneath. So it was almost what it reflects is that each of us has a golden Buddha. And each time we reveal what we're not, we're actually revealing the golden Buddha that is underneath. So that's what I believe self-knowledge can do. It can allow us to go into this inquiry about who I am. And in that process, we're actually removing the mud. We're removing these layers that we created as, I guess, the other thing I should bring up is that we're born into this world and we're born into these boxes of language. And it's based on who people said we were. So for example, as a baby and up to, let's say 7, our parents have such a influence on us. So they're kind of saying to us, you're like this and you're like that. And then you go into school and it's telling you who you are and your religion's telling you who you are. And so we've built this identity on what others have said we are, not on who we are. So that lives with us as we take on life. We're actually inauthentic because those things aren't really who we are. It's who we wound up being because people told us we were that. The society told us we were that. So what self-knowledge, the journey does is it actually helps to unravel these identities, these things that we created, that who we are, to really find the authenticity that's within us. So it's like discovering your true nature. So when we discover our own true nature, we then realize who we are, and then we also discover the nature of everything. So I think what I guess I'm an advocate for is a transformation in education. So I believe that in the schools, we should be bringing forward, first and foremost, a conversation about energy. I think we can all agree that we've gone to school and there's not really too much information on we are energy beings. And I found this even more so, my 3 daughters going through the system and me seeing it again, just how what it does focus on, which is more of an external kind of world. And I believe we should be creating the internal world education. So this is that self-knowledge I talk to. And so if we start by saying we're energy, and why do I say we're energy? Because quantum physics and science has now proven that with the microscopes, they can actually see at the smallest particle that there's a wave, a field of energy that everything is born out of and then dies back into. Well, we're all that. We're all popping in and out of this energy. So we are the energy. Everything is the energy. So when I say I am the one, I say it in respect to that, which is I am an expression of that energy. And when we distinguish between authenticity and inauthenticity, it's how much we allow that energy to flow through us as the instrument for experience. So I would say that what it looks like is I am the one, or I am the source of this energy, having an experience as Katia. But Katia, if Katia doesn't get in the way, the source is able to work through Katia at the highest expression and at the highest potential. So consider that when we're born into these boxes of language and who people say we are, we limit that potential because we've put up barriers and filters from allowing that expression to be full and uninhibited, let's say. So it's exciting because there are principles in energy that operate within everything. So we have these universal laws, the law of consciousness, correspondence, like as above, so below. We have vibration, everything's vibrating. There's rhythm in everything. There is a cause and effect. So we're not taught this in school. And that, by the way, is how we operate. This is what's missing. So it's like when you discover that you are the one, now it's what is that in the operation of energy? How can we be aligned with those principles that allows for full expression and potential? So there's these principles at play that live within us and live within every single living thing. So it's really becoming aware of who am I? How do I operate according to these laws and principles? And in answering those two things and being in those inquiries, what automatically gets born out of that is your reason for existence. So you'll anchor and you'll get that this is a much greater, grander play, whatever's happening in our lives and what's revealing itself through us is much greater than we can imagine. So it's like we don't realize the power that we have because we've been born into a context that we aren't the one. And in that, we've got this diminishment context that has us live very limited. And we don't get to really experience these divine, incredible powers that we have. So that's kind of the start of what could be a longer, much more in-depth conversation. But I'd like to put it out there to everyone right now in what did you get out of that for yourself? Is there anything that came up? Anyone want to expand on that?
I want to just add on to your point about the one and the matrix connection with the matrix of the one being Neo in a different order. And then tying it back to the conversation we had on Friday as well, when we were talking about the disordering of thinking and the profiteering of the DSM series, and how all of that ties into making pharmaceuticals the solution to disordered thinking, which simply means you're out of your heart, you're in your head, you're trapped because you're scared to go up and you don't want to go down. So you're just spinning in the same spot, expecting different results, wanting things to change, but not willing to change, which means you're not going anywhere, because where there is a will, there is a way. Without a will, there is no way. We can't do it without a will.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to really just bring in that concept, because I think that that is so foundational for us to really get to the fact that disorder requires ordering intentionally, lovingly, caringly. You know, that's what we're doing by coming together in these meetings and podcasts and summits, in person gatherings. Like, it's literally rebuilding the connecting of dots between us. And that really goes into the context of, like, you know what? I am the one in my life that can change how I go about my day. I can't change anyone else, but I can be a positive influence. I can be a positive example or role model. But ultimately, I can't make anyone else feel a certain way. I can't make them think a certain way. I can't make them do anything specifically without force or coercion. And if I can, then I'm going to be liable if they have harm, loss, or fraud brought to them, right? So it's just like, I can be all of these things if I educate myself enough to be informed, so that I don't have to conform. I can draw from within to see that the form they wish me to be put into is too small. My will is too great for your box. I will not enter into that box. And that is the cat in the hat that says, I am done, to the next.
So wonderful always to hear you speak, Laura. I'm fascinated by your use of language. So I'm a physicist by school, and so to your point about us being energy, it's not taught in school in the sense that they don't make the connection, but they do teach us the equation, and that's E equals mc squared, right? Mass and energy are completely interchangeable, but then we're not allowed to make that connection. And you know, there's a whole lot to be said about that, keeping us in the box, as well as big pharma doesn't want it getting out, because if you understand the equation, M is mass, M is the molecule, is the physical molecule. Any drug that is a molecule can also be an energy, which is a laser. So you can wipe out the entire pharmaceutical industry with lasers, 100%. You could stimulate any receptor in the body with lasers, and they don't want that getting out. I built lasers, and I'm a big fan of lasers. So like, there's that. And the other thing I wanted to speak to, I'm taking an addiction recovery course that's based on Kundalini yoga. It's called Beyond Addiction. Fantastic course. And we discuss a lot about the separation between the person and the personality. And the personality is what we create. And in a sense, we might create a personality for every person, for every other personality that we interact with. But underneath, the person is the consciousness, like capital C consciousness, not small c consciousness. And when you can get the ego out of the way and see the personalities for what they are, which could be a coping mechanism, could be a positive coping mechanism or a negative one, depending on what you're dealing with. But that I am underneath is the person, is the true person. And the further down you go, the more you can see how we're all connected. And actually in higher dimensions, back to the physics side of it, if you integrate up through the dimensions, I always have a hard time explaining this because I saw it in a diagram. It just blew me away. In 3 dimensions, we're separated because there's a space between us. But when you go up to 4 dimensions, if you can imagine this, the cellular membrane is actually continuous. And so when the mother gives birth, when the cells separate in 4 and higher dimensions, they're actually the same organism in actuality, like not theoretically. So through the mother, we're physically the same body in higher dimensions. So the mother is just expanding. So there's only one human. right? There's only one cat, there's only one dog in these higher dimensions. And I think Plato spoke to this with his form, his Platonic form concept. And then when you go up into higher dimensions, 5 and 6, you realize that the consciousness is also connected, and that, and you can actually dig into this through these mathematical physics concepts, that we're all one consciousness, we're all one body. Sadhguru even talks about how we're just extensions of the earth. We're just a collection of food. The body is just a collection of food, and that food came out of the earth. So we're just bits of the earth that collected and decided to walk around, right? So there may be a question of whether we actually can go and live on the moon or Mars. Like, it may not be possible, because we're actually just parts of the earth that have grown legs and walked around. All the living things are just higher order manifestations of what the earth is, or at least what the soil is on the planet. Like, the soil as a living entity, creates more living entities. And so these concepts aren't hokey pokey or theoretical or psychological. They're really grounded in physics and math. They're just, you might need to add a dimension, the 4th and 5th and 6th dimensions, but it's all right there to see. The connections aren't made in our educational system. So I totally agree with you that educational reform is everything.
Mm-hmm.
So what you said was so important around personalities and persons, because there is confusion in that we have been indoctrinated into subtly, that we don't even notice, because we then consider ourselves to be the person, when the person is actually the larger gestalt that contains the patterning of consciousness of the man or woman underneath of all of that. So it's like you have the persona, you have the personality, you have the persona, you have the man or woman then underneath of those. But it's the layers of context that go over top of who we truly are, that then we agree to be less than we are without realizing it's lowering our standard. But here's the thing, in the way that we've been deceived and tricked is a great example, because in all of the movies, we've been taught to really think it is noble to be a knight, right? And what does the knight, how does the man get to be a knight? He drops his knee in front of the one that uses the sacred sword or the sacred word as the sword that anoints the man to make him be something other than under his reign, which means the knight must work for the king, no longer being equal, standing even. He then drops his standing so he can stand under another man or woman. So like it's so subtle, we miss it until we have conversations like these, conscious conversations of another kind and caliber, that make us say, you have a person. It is also known as a trust. And you have been putting your trust outside of yourself, forgetting that you are the creator. In Telegram, on in the Peaceful Inner Warriors United Assembly group, I actually shared a description of a group that I'm not part of specifically, but I love the fact that in it says that if you are not creating, if you are in a reality where you are not God, you're in somebody else's reality. Like, we're meant to be the creators in our box. Like, we've each manifested this experience right now. Each of us, in our own way, manifested the experience that our soul craved. Because we're consciously creating in this world, and we're putting ourselves out there, and we're saying, well, if it's Katia and I having a conscious conversation of another kind, fantastic. And if more come to, even better. No judgment, no expectation, no attachment, just gratitude for the opportunity to be here and invest the 86,400 seconds we get wisely. So that's how we become the one. Like, it's not some grand affair where the knight gets knighted. Like, it's everything that it took for the knight to be in a position where then he was recognized. Because it's like that famous saying about it takes 20 years to become an overnight success. Like for 20 years, you work your ass off and you put in all of your team, your time, energy, effort, attention, your money, you invest it fully, you commit. Everybody thinks you're crazy. They want you to quit. They want you to trade it in, get a regular job, do what makes me feel comfortable so that I understand how you're going to support yourself if things fall, because that's what I'm expecting and that's the reality I'm going to create. And I don't want that for you and I don't want that for me either. So just stay away with your fear. And I'm going to stay in faith. Thank you very much. I'm going to choose to be full and be the one that I was waiting for, because that's what we have the choice to be able to do in any moment. Choose fear or faith. That's what we fill ourself with. The CELLS hyphen F for whether we fill ourselves with fear or faith. I was having a conversation this morning, actually, and we were talking about cancer, and I actually made a comment about how the fact that in, like, what's the benefit of knowing in some ways, like when you've got a dis-ease, cellular disharmony within the body, what's the benefit of knowing if the current culture, cult you are, says cut it out, just slice and dice, you're gonna have to heal and you're gonna have a scar, but just get rid of that and just let it go. Well, what if, an alternative idea that's very controversial, but what if that part of the body was actually the part that was willing to hold that emotion, energy and motion within the energetic den of us, Eden, us, garden, we're the guard, we're supposed to be in Garden of Eden. But what if, like, we're the ones that are the guards in Eden to determine what we're going to let in and out? And I lost my train of thought because I've been at it for longer than what is time for me to speak. So I'm going to throw it over. And if I meant to remember where I was going to go when I mentioned the Garden Eden, and then I just break that one down and say, that one I'm just going to let drop. And then, oh my God, in that moment, I finally got the option to empty my trash. Literally. This whole time it's been not working, and now I can throw the shit out because it's time to clear the patterns.
I'd like to comment on cancer because I learned a lot about it. My father had cancer in his lip, and I did a lot of studying on it. And cancer is actually a function of the immune system. A common thing that happens is, or let's give a specific example. So a molecule that's a toxin enters your body. So I've been exposed to asbestos. So my other reason for this is to understand what may happen to me if I'm not able to get the asbestos out. So asbestos is a fiber that enters your lung, and you can't process that fiber. It can't go any further into the body. There's no biological process to process an asbestos fiber. So unless you cough it out, which is what I worked on for a long time, but if you can't cough it out, the body makes a tumor around it, and it encapsulates that toxin, and the tumor is protecting the body from that toxin. So it's a protection mechanism of the immune system. So if I don't have a good parallel example, but if your hand was holding back something that was coming at you, right, and then you cut your hand off, well, that seems crazy. It's absolutely insane. So the real way to go about dealing with cancer is to figure out how to process that toxin. So what I learned is that the real way to do cancer treatment is to detox. And then when you understand how a tumor works, it feeds on sugar, it doesn't use oxygen, blah, blah, blah. So you go keto, it's all these other ways. But one of the greatest surgeons, and I can't remember his name, but he was like a really great surgeon. He said, by the time you're into surgery for whatever the disease is, you've really lost. It's like hardcore. The last thing that you should ever do is turn to surgery. Like, there's a million things to do before surgery, and by the time you're at that choice to get surgery done, you should have exhausted all your previous, and nothing else worked. But a lot of people go straight to it, and my dad did. He had his lip cut off, and he had his face reconstructed, and all his lymph nodes taken out. And if only I'd known a little bit beforehand, we could have done something. He let it go and it got too far. And there wasn't an option there, you know, when you're stage 4. But people can turn it around. And then there's a whole other thing about toxic relationships causing tumors and stuff like that. So if you just, rather than cutting out the tumor, cut out the toxic relationship, and then the tumor just dissolves. And there's a lot of statistical, not anecdotal. I mean, there's a lot of evidence, not through studies, but through observation that this works. So whatever the toxin is, the key is to detox,
Yes.
right?
This is exactly what I was saying this morning. Thank you, Bella, because that was exactly what I was trying to say about cancer. Like, do you want to know? And then, like, in the modern death cult, it's about cutting it out and just like throw it away and just do with that instead of dealing with the emotional undercurrent. But essentially, if you cut out the hand, you no longer have it there. But it's just like all the free radicals of energy in motion, which is emotion, that was being held by the hand, is now floating through the rest of the body. So if we really want to be the one that we were waiting for, we have to actually be willing to love the free radicals of emotions inside of ourselves. I absolutely love that whole emptying the trash is like, I don't even know what it's doing, but that was part of the interrupting of my thought, which then gave Bella an opportunity to add to it a perspective I wouldn't have. And I just want to celebrate the fact that we're doing this, because we are so much stronger because we're all here together. And Tammy, even if you're not saying anything overtly, your energy is contributing to balancing the whole experience. So recognize the value of whether you are speaking or not speaking when you're in a group context, because if you're present, that is a gift that cannot be purchased. So Katia, I'm throwing it over, please.
Yeah, so it's an interesting topic, and again, why it's important to understand energy, because when we understand energy, we understand the gifts that we have already within us and how to optimize that energy so that we are as whole and complete to integrity as we can be. So I wanted to bring this thing about integrity into the conversation. And integrity defined is whole, complete, and undivided. And this is another term we don't really use and we don't really define to that degree. And when we look at holistic, I love it because it's like, for example, we talk about these diseases, which when we look at energy is just blocked energy. It's energy that we've stored and we've suppressed and we haven't dealt with. So integrity is an important term and an important thing we should be bringing into light, because it has us looking at everything that we do and that has an effect. So it's like, if I have a relationship that's incomplete, consider that's affecting my overall integrity. So I'm not whole and complete. And that incompletion is sitting somewhere in my body. Like it's an energy that's been stored, and we think that we can fool it, right? We can put on the show like everything's good, you know, like I'll see someone and pretend that everything's good, but really what's sitting in the space that we are, actually, that's what we really are, is the space that we come into, and that energy presents itself even before we speak. But if we make a conscious effort of looking at ourselves and seeing if we are whole and complete, and we do an inventory of our life. Are we complete with our family? Are we complete with what we're doing? Is what I do every day in integrity with who I am? How many people are doing jobs that are literally sucking the energy out of you? And it's like, that's incomplete. That's not really who you are, what you're meant to be doing, for example. So it's like this inventory of our life, and talk about toxic. What are these things? Are they toxic, or are they feeding us energy that makes us alive and that gives us that vigor of life? And has us be fully self-expressed. And this is what I've been in the inquiry of over a number of years. And I think what we're seeing right now is this call to integrity, this call to oneness. And how do we do it? I believe it has to do with this understanding how we operate and what are those principles and laws that are at play that can help us identify, or help us identify what it is that's authentic to us and that's in integrity to us. And when we're in full integrity, we have the ability then to be the example for others, and that it will affect like a momentum. It'll, create a momentum out in the world as well. So I think that's really what this is. Everything that's happening right now, I believe, is just pointing to that. And I also want to just make a point on how synergy and synthesis is important. We have a lot of things happening in the world right now. We've had COVID, we have the war. And what I've noticed is that more and more, there isn't a conversation happening where we're looking at both sides. As you know, there's a big division. We have the right versus the left, the red versus the blue, and it's like we've lost the ability to have a conversation where we can synthesize together and come to an agreement, where fundamentally what we'll find out in having a conversation is that we all agree that there's fundamental things that are important to each and every one of us. But we never get to really get to that point, because conversations, everybody that I'm speaking to, even now through COVID, I hear more and more disagreements within families. Like there's a whole breakdown happening right now. And it's because we don't have a conversation in an open kind of way, in a forum where we take the time to get into someone else's world. And if we discover, because you know how we make judgments sometimes, we see someone, we're like, oh my God, they're so mean. Just look how they just treated, and we kind of personalize it. Where if we really understood the story behind that person, we would actually be, we would connect at a level that we couldn't even imagine, because we all fundamentally have these things happening with each and every one of us in our own, custom way. So when I speak of integrity, it's integrity as an individual, and then our responsibility with integrity in others. And that means that we need to ensure that those people we engage with, we allow for them to be whole and complete with the space we bring. So imagine what that can create in the world. I believe that between self-knowledge and integrity, we could create peace. That's kind of what I see as emerging. So I just wanted to add that as a little bit more to the previous conversation.
Very synergistic.
Yeah, I liked what you said. Oh, synergistic. Yeah, I liked what you said though about jobs that are draining us. Because I just turned down a job today at Drake's house, and when it was offered to me, I thought about it, and it took a minute, and I realized no, this gig isn't. If I took this gig, it would be just for the money, and there's nothing else there. And I'd be curious to what Laura thinks of Drake, because you were talking about Kanye and Britney and Bieber before, and there's a few decisions I made, perceptions, like he cut down some trees, and I'm a big tree hugger, and so maybe I've passed some judgments on the guy or whatnot, but I think overall for me, that because I talked about it with my boss and he understood. And he was like, yeah, we can give it to somebody else. I'm like, yeah, give it to someone who needs that money more than I do, because I'm not in it just for the money anymore. I do events, and if the event's not magic, I don't want to be there.
Yes, this is the magic of the moment, and learning how to ride it so hard you stop caring who's watching, which sounds really graphic, but like really, it's just getting on the broomstick and going. And just like knowing that you're going to ride faster than others can keep up. And like, you want to bring as much magic into it as possible. But when you recognize that you're doing it from your heart and others are doing it from a different space, you feel it because it's resonant. So if you don't feel drawn, there's not a vibrational match because there's a values differential. And so that actually kind of ties into, in a very different way, but a term that I found this weekend called menticide, if you've heard of it, which is how the systematic dumbing down of the population, that's actually called menticide. So it's there for us if we look. And then it goes into the mass psychosis and the paying out of celebrities to endorse things they don't believe in, which I don't have anything specifically. I haven't felt into Drake, but I haven't been drawn to him. I feel like there's like him and Rihanna are kind of the same feel in a way, which they're both phenomenal artists. I just have never followed them specifically myself. And like there's a lot of darkness in some things, or there's perversions, like in God's Plan by Drake. That song could be really excellent, except for I feel like there's a few places where it's like, I don't know about how I feel about ones who are less conscious of what is going into their subconscious through this programming right now with these lyrics. So it's like, I haven't paid attention to him specifically. I speak about Justin Bieber because I've always felt, he's been significant in my mind. And it's like, I know that he is someone that I desire to collaborate with because I feel like he's seeking truth, and he got bought out way too young, and he's willing to, not to say convert, because I don't know what he is or what he's pledged himself to be, but I would like to make sure to help him actually break curses, vows, oaths, contracts, and that which would tie his soul to the authorities he's given his power to. And Britney Spears, same thing. She just got stuck under the conservatorship, which is the Mental Health Act, from my experience. And the other one that I had mentioned was Justin Bieber, Britney Spears, and Kanye West, who's married to a family of narcissists that are completely invested in their outer persona and experience. So they can't afford a truth teller or a whistleblower to be in their midst because that doesn't work well. So in terms of Drake, I can't speak specifically. Like, God bless you, man. I hope you're for the love and light, and not that just only being limited to the expressions of that, but are willing to feel the darkness without letting it overtake you and turn you into something that is going to ultimately lead to consequences for another that would jeopardize your soul. Is to Drake, to Rihanna, to Justin Bieber, to all of the top musicians and everyone else too, because each of those artists do contain a piece of our greatness, a fragment of our greatness that we haven't embodied or owned. So it had to show up in the outer world outside of us in a character such as them. So if we think about it in those terms, it's just like, those are the gladiators in the game that we've been made aware of, that we've been taught to idolize. Idle eyes, so we stop looking to the guru within and then look outside of ourselves for one to worship and idolize and worship. Are we going to war? On which ship will we do it? Who will we have as a teacher? Who will we have as the leader? Who's going to be the captain on this ship? Well, we're going all the way, right? It's just like, you can play, or you can make it all work and control and force, and that's the confinement. Like, out of the box is free and playful. I've got no expectations whether you like me or not, but I know that when I share my heart, it activates the heart in you that comes out to meet mine, and then we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Katia, what are you feeling?
Oh my God, so much, so much. Wow. It's definitely there's so many factors in place. And I think it's, like I said, we have to look at the boxes of language we've agreed to. And something that came up in the conversation here was, it spawned me to think about this idea that we live into, which is we need to earn a living. So what we've been kind of misled, or kind of for a reason, obviously been brought down that road, is obviously for the ability for someone else to be in control. And there's this idea that our worth is tied to what we do and have, not who we're being. So this earning a living means you were born into this world, and it's not in abundance that your basic needs are taken care of. You need to earn your right to those basic needs. And so it's like that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So it has the physiological need, then it's the safety, and then it's the friends and family. And then if you're lucky, by the time you die, you'll be self-actualized. I think it's a purposeful system that's in place for control, and it has us live diminished, because the way that they control the system is we never get off that rat wheel. They have to just make the food a little bit more expensive. Now we're behind again. Now they'll influence the gas prices and we're back good. So I say we flip the Maslow's hierarchy of needs upside down, and now we are born self-actualized, because this environment is set up for us to enable our greatness, enable the self-expression. We are like gods. And it changes the whole perspective of our lives. So it's like this worth connected to the value of what we do and have, versus our value is who we are being, standing for something greater than we can even imagine. So I wanted to kind of bring that in as well, because it's so fundamental to how we think. And, being cause, when we're born as this godlike being, and we're creating an environment to enhance that has us be cause of our life, not at the effect. And that's what the opportunity we have to be cause of our life, will be able to create that future that way right now doesn't look like we can see. But if we have the opportunity to come from there, all possibility exists. It'll be limitless what we can do.
So I have so many things that I want to just add in here, which the first one is what we mentioned in the last episode, where journey is joy and earn left. And it was the URNE of the ballot box that our inner kingdom is when we give our vote elsewhere. And then we become wards of the court, or wards of the system, that can do whatever they want because we're crew members instead of passengers with a Bill of Rights that can get off the ship at any time. Crew members can't, but passengers can, if we actually claim the right to step into the side that would allow us to claim our equity from the trust that is due us as ones provided for. So joy is a feeling. So when we talk about seeing, it's actually feeling. It's just like we see with our eyes, but we feel with our heart. Like those are the eyes of the heart. And so it's just like, like coming back in the moment and just feeling ourselves drop, like feeling yourself sitting on whatever is supporting you in this moment in a way that before you weren't conscious, but now you're thinking of it. And now you're becoming consciously competent at doing what you were unconsciously competent at doing before I brought your attention to it. So the journey and the joy and the earn was the first piece. And then the piece that I want to go back to is a pattern that we both did on my show. Not my show this time, but like on one summit, I did it. And then you just did this now. And it's like the pattern of my platform, right? So it's just the fact that when you shared the hierarchy of needs, I did a whole presentation where I brought this in, and as I was giving the description in the last notices, liability, and the myth of Santa Claus, I think was the one that I did it as the last one before I kind of went down into my own lower stuff and then had to come back from that, which is a process in itself. But part of it was the fact that I did what I noticed happen when you said it too, in that we go straight from belonging to self-actualization and skip respect. Because culturally, that's what's missing. Respect and trust. Respect and trust are what's missing. And it's because Carolyn Mace, I often reference her stuff because I've invested a lot of time, energy, and money to be influenced by her teachings. And she talks about, like, we now living a lot, who are alive now, are alive during a time when it is equal, we have equal capacity for destruction of the earth and full creation of something that hasn't existed before. It's just like we are at such a point of uncertainty that, like, even the variability of uncertainty is not certain enough for us now to be able to balance those two fundamental basic needs, which is Tony Robbins's adaptation of Maslow's hierarchy, which is certainty and variety, the equivalent of survival. Like, we need to know things for sure, but we want to have a little surprise in there, but not too much, just enough. And you better know how I like it. And then you've got significance and connection or love, right? And then you get into growth and contribution. That's Tony Robbins's model of Maslow's hierarchy. But if we both missed respect as a slip that could easily just go unnoticed, and maybe did by everyone else, but I noticed it because I did the same thing previously, it's not calling you out. It's saying like the fact that the pattern is playing out and I had the pattern already slap me in the face, to then be able to say, hey, how is that what we miss both times we go into that one?
So clarify what you mean by the respect.
In Maslow's hierarchy of need, you've got survival, safety, belonging, respect, self-actualization. So when we both shared that teaching, we skipped respect in saying it and went straight from belonging into what do we want? Self-actualization.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do we have to have before we can get that? Self-respect. Because otherwise we won't give it a try. We'll give up before we even get there if we don't have self-respect, which is why it has been systematically targeted.
Well, if you look at it and you turn it upside down, it starts with each and every one of us. And if we honor our divinity, we automatically will honor the divinity outside of us. So it starts with an honoring of our own greatness and divinity. And then therefore, because if it's turned upside down, then the next step would be the respect outside of yourself. So it's like now you've realized who you are, we realize who we are. And then in our honoring of that divinity, we then, I think that's what the missing is today. There's a stewardship missing. You know, like the honor, the treat others the way you want to be treated. We've lost that completely. Like, if we just looked at that simple, amazing maxim, and again, the question would be, why isn't that prevalent? We could take it deeply and say, because the context for who we say we are is at play. Like, I can speak for myself, but not for everyone else. And it's like, we have to just look back at that and go, why isn't that the case? Why are we not treating others? And all we have to do is just look at the shape of the planet. It's in a diminished state because the inner state's diminished. So we allow for the diminishment outside. So it's really a time to really look inward again and really just do that work and understand at a personal level what makes us inauthentic, what has us be out of integrity with who we say we are as that whole and complete. Because it will start with each and every one of us transforming from the inside to have it on the outside.
Absolutely love it. And I have loved this hour. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for showing up, Katia. This is always exciting and expansive. And the fact that I couldn't store it on my computer because I was having so much issues means that I stored it on the cloud, which I never do, which means that the recording was uninterrupted. When I was kicked off, your replay was still going and it wasn't an issue because it was already in the cloud. So we're fully looked after and we're fully connecting with what we need. Like earlier when you were speaking, Katia, about stepping in your power, and the light of my ring light came on, amplified. Like this side of my computer USB key has not been working for months. So like magic has been abound here. And the fact that we're not able to stream live means that you better show up if you want to be in the room, because you never know if you don't get to watch the replay just because you wanted to watch and be a voyeur. Well, that's cool and it's no problem. But at the same time, it's not guaranteed, because you only know if you get yourself in the loop. So that is a wrap for this evening. I did want to mention on Friday, if anyone, or no, on Saturday, the 19th, if you're in the Simcoe area, I'm going to do a teens transformation workshop. So we're going to breaking down bullying. So talking about bullying, but we're going to do it from a systemic perspective. Anyone that shows up, I'm going to see if a friend will record it, and then we'll have the workshop presentation. Any youth that want to come out, this is our opportunity to say, bullying is not okay. You're supposed to call the police. I wouldn't suggest that with this circumstance. However, what we can do is be the change we seek in our community by gathering, uniting, and actually coming to know one another, because those men and women working for the police, that are working for the courts, that are working for all of the corrupted bodies, are good men and women. Some of them great, some of them not so much. But ultimately, we're all going to have to pay for our choices. And if we don't know one another, then we can't stand shoulder to shoulder. And I think that if it starts in our community, then it can come to other places. And our youth are the artists that are going to turn this around. We talked about the fourth stage earlier. The fourth turning is what it's called. It's based on a book by that name that talks about the 20-year blocks. Well, my generation, 84 to 2000 and something, is the heroes. And then we've got the artists that are the next generation. And the ones before that, I think, are the nomads. And the one before that, the pioneers. So like we've all got our generation, which is the turning, and then we've got our purpose. And it's time for us to all come together and say, regardless of how many years you've had in this place, courage requires heart, which is the French word for coeur. So let us do our part regardless of where we start, and say the wheel of life. I wanted to say, Katia, that is an exercise that most coaches use with clients about their starting points. It's a very powerful exercise to do just to keep yourself on track. So I just wanted to mention that, and then say that if you want to come together and play on the peer support on the 20th of March as well. So that's at 2 o'clock, both of them at 2 p.m. So would love to have you guys come. Yeah, well, so Sunday the 20th at 2 p.m. We're going to gather. We might do some music afterwards as well. You're a musician as well?
I mix bands. So I've been doing live events for 25 years. Speaking of having that job that resonates with you, I got up into international touring, stadium touring, and I know I'm in the right place when I'm doing a show, and I'm so amazed. I'm like, I can't believe I'm here. This is the best gig ever, and I'm being paid.
Yeah.
So like when I'm working on like Beyonce building her video tower, or building Coldplay stage, or anything like that, and at some point I'll look around stadium and I'll just have this moment. I'm like, wow, this is going good. This is a peak experience. And then it's like, oh, and I'm getting paid to do this. This is the spot. Like that's the spot to be in.
Yeah.
For sure.
Wow. That's awesome.
And I hope everybody can get that out of their job, out of their work. I don't know if I'm going to go back to stadium touring. I don't think so. It's really hard on the body. And I'm moving into a second phase of my life now. I think maybe doing teaching Kundalini meditation, stuff like that. But I'm still going to be doing events, supporting events, and doing recordings and stuff like that. Technical support, probably just not the top big shows.
That's phenomenal. Katia, I don't know whether you're okay if you've got time for some extra conversation here, because the Kundalini and Kundalini and awakenings and the heart and chakras balancing and yoga, like, you can do tremendous damage if you haven't moved enough of the emotion in your heart and call your heart presence back to actually be able to support the rising.
There's a blockage at the third chakra. There's a doorway there between the third and the fourth chakra. So as people move up from the first, second, and third, most people reflect back down until you're actually able to open the gateway to the heart, so you can move it on up. Yeah. So it's a lot. It's a practice. Step by step, ferociously.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it can be. I've also knocked myself out activating too much Kundalini energy too fast, too hard. Right. So yeah, it's certainly something to pay attention to the gurus.
Yeah. Wow. That's fantastic. And I'll admit that as the conversation progressed and it's being recorded and it'll be published, I do just want to make a comment in how it's a really great example of you never know who's on a call.
Yeah.
You never know who knows who on a call, right? So it's just like, that was like a setup question, and like, I don't know how I did specifically, but at the same time, it's just kind of like, it brings me actually, Oprah Winfrey said that at the end of her 25 years of interviews, she reflected and she said that every single person at the end of their interview said, "How did I do?" Whether it was the top celebrities, the man who killed his family, the pedophile, the Satanist, like, how did I do? Was it good? Was it good enough? Like, look for the validation of the ones that we idolize or that we admire, the gurus. And I have, I'm going to look for it, but I have a handout from one of the John Maxwell team certification trainings that I was at, where they actually broke down the meaning of guru, but in all of the different ways as to how it translates with being a mentor, a teacher, all kinds of different variations of it. And if we're looking outside of ourselves without actually reflecting back and processing through, it's just like, we think we're doing the right thing. But in this world, the Right Use of Will series by Cian DeRohan has been really helping me come to a different understanding, because it's the four parts, or the four parts of the body. So it's mother, which is will, awareness, God principle, which is spirit, and then you have heart as the child of will and awareness. And then you have the body of manifestation, because we are manifestation and will of manifestation embodied. And so when we think of ourselves as like the ones embodied, the individuated expressions of the grand overall designer, here to experience and express ourselves, like what Katia had shared earlier, it's just like, when we get back to that remembrance, it's just like, whoa, that.
Well, to Katia's point of inverting the triangle, all children are born gurus. The child is the guru, and then it's taught not to be the guru. Perhaps the educational system is the last vestige of the British Empire, the British educational system, and in that standardization of the human, so that it can be transported anywhere in the British Empire as a cog in a system, and you standardize that cog. So yeah, back to what you're saying about educational reform, we got to get rid of that old British system, and every parent we can teach every parent that the child's born a guru. You should listen to that child because it will tell you things that you don't know. And then maybe the rest of us, we just need to reawaken to that guru within.
Well, you said it at 9/11, so big the SOS waves going out into the universe, talking about alert, alert, they're on to us. These are powerful players of the game who know powerful players.
You got censored by YouTube before you even started. They didn't even open up the door for you.
I can't get that strike off of my account from last year. They won't take it down. And it's just like,
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But that's why I don't have a community in terms of I don't make little meme posts on my YouTube or give any insight as to when I'm actually going live. Not that I always know, to be fair, because of how random and spontaneous I am, but that I'll get better at that too. We scheduled this. We made it happen. You showed up. I celebrate each of you. I appreciate you for your value. Tammy, was there anything that you wanted to share that we could contribute from you? Though your presence is more than enough.
I agree with everything that was said. Someone just said to me recently that everything we believe is a lie. And I'm like, whoa. But no, I agree with everything. I too would have had a lot to say, but energy exists. There's nowhere that energy doesn't exist. And so let's just take this goodness with us and we'll see what happens next week.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Thank you for showing up and look forward to having you back Mondays, 8 p.m. Katia and I, and amazing guests who come on to be themselves and share some of the gold that they've discovered along their journey too. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a fantastic week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Peace.
Amazing.